I got this video sent to me. The title is "What Does Hell Look Like?" Sean Ryan interview. Let's check it out. Tell me what you think.
Near-death experiencers are reticent to come forward because this is a sacred experience that is hard to describe in our three-dimensional terms. So they don't often come forward readily. But even of those who have come forward, 23%, according to one study, came forward talking about having a hellish experience to some degree or another. And so these are common. This 2019 European Academy of Neurology did a study across 35 countries, found that 5% of the population, or 1 out of 20, claims to have had a near-death experience. But they also found an even greater percentage that had hellish experiences or negative experiences. So you got to make sense of these as well. Interestingly, Jesus talked about hell a lot as something real, but not as a scare tactic. I think it's more as a look. This is reality, and what he came to do was that no one would go there. But some do in their near-death experience. So, for instance, I interviewed this atheist college professor, tenured college professor, who was he was an art professor who was doing a tour with students in Europe, in France, and his lower duodenum ruptured. You usually have like 5 to 6 hours before you're dead because you're spilling all that junk into your cavity. And it was a weekend, so they couldn't find a surgeon in France. And after 8 hours, he died. Now, he thought when you die, it's just unplug the computer, screen goes blank, there's nothing. And that's not what happened. And instead, he said he was standing there by his bed. He felt the worst he had ever felt in his life, and suddenly he feels wonderful. And he doesn't even know he's dead. Like, he doesn't realize he's dead because he's sitting there thinking, something happened. I feel wonderful. And he feels these new senses. This group of people then come into the hallway, and he can see them in the hallway, and they're calling to him, Howard, come with us. And he said, I'm sick. I need a surgeon. That's what he's been waiting for. And they said, oh, we know all about you. Come with us. Don't you want us to help you? We're going to help you. Come on, we've been waiting a long time. Come with us. Okay, so time out. I like to point out that not every near-death experience is as deep as others, like meaning all the elements. So some just, there's an out-of-body experience and they're back in.
Okay.
Those can be interpreted in a million ways, right? A million worldviews can wrap around that. If Howard had at this point come back to his body and been resuscitated, his interpretation probably would have been, hey, it's all good. Atheists go to heaven. It feels great. It's nice people. Everything's good. But that's not what happened. So he starts to follow these people. And again, time and even distance, it doesn't work the same on the other side, which I don't fully understand that, except that by analogy, think about, from here to Austin, Texas, where I live, Nashville to Austin, it's a long way, right? It's a 2-hour flight. But what if I could think it and be there? How far is it now?
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, distance doesn't mean the same thing. So on the other side, so he couldn't tell, and he follows these people, and he starts to realize they're deceiving him. They're starting to mock him. They're cursing him. They're all these, and he starts to realize this is not good. And then he realizes he's in this darkness, and it keeps getting darker, and he tries to say, hey, I want to go back. And they're like, You're not going anywhere. They start pushing and shoving, and he's in he calls it a darkness that's darker than black. And I've heard people commonly say that. Jesus called it the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, meaning like just, it's, I don't know, I guess just horrific. And that's what he experienced. And so he finally realizes he's being deceived by these creatures that he couldn't fully see completely, because they were kind of veiled. But now it's dark and he can't see them, but he can feel them, and they start to maul him. He starts to try to fight to get away, and they're having fun. So I've had him talk to me about this 4 times, and he starts to describe it. And then he says to me, I can't go any farther, because he had PTSD from it.
Every single time
And
you interviewed him, he couldn't push past.
yeah, he
certain
can't. There's a certain point that he would say, I can't go any farther because it's taken me a long time to. He had what, vets would call PTSD, because it's real. It's more real than this. And I think that's a very important point to note, that what's ahead is better than the best we've experienced, but what's ahead is worse than the worst we've experienced too. And I believe that we are in a temporal, time capsule for a purpose. We are in a time of choosing. We're in a time of choosing. What kingdom do we want to be a part of? Is it me and my kingdom and I rule? Because as it turns out, that's what hell is. Hell is the creature wanting to play God. And it's dominate or be dominated. And that's what Howard realized in this place. It was really interesting, because he said, first of all, picture the worst prison scene. Like the worst. I years ago, I saw a movie, Midnight Express. You ever see that?
No, I haven't.
Turkish prison, just getting brutalized and raped daily, and all kinds of. It's a pretty gruesome movie. That's what was going on. And so, and just being eviscerated. And what he said, several things he said that was interesting. He said, I realized that these people were my kindred spirits. I said, what do you mean? So I realized that they were like me on earth. I came to a point in my life when I thought the biggest, baddest bear in the woods wins. And that's how I lived. And he said, I wasn't good I wasn't nice to my students. I was all about me and building my monuments to myself and my ego. I cheated on my wife a lot. It was all about me. And he said, what I realized is that these people were like me on earth, but when the good was gone, it just spirals down worse and worse. So he's in this place, and this is really fascinating. He said in his solar plex, because he still was himself. And he said he heard, pray to God. And his first thought is, I don't believe in God. And he feels it again, pray to God. And he's like, he's fighting. And this is a very important thing, Sean, because the ego can imprison us. Our egos can absolutely imprison us. And he is literally in a hellish place, experiencing the worst things you can imagine. And he's hearing this pray to God, but he's fighting it. And finally, the third time, he's like, I don't even know what to pray. And he starts just saying this, like, God bless America, and thy country 'tis of thee. And, he's just piecing things together, and he's saying these things. But when he says the name of God, they become more angry and are threatening him even more. But he also noticed backing off. So he keeps doing it because it's working. And then he ends up just alone there. And he said, for how long, I don't know. He said, time doesn't work the same. It could have been decades. But he was just thinking about his life. And he was thinking about, how, again, on the other side, truth is truth. There's no hiding. And he's like, this is who I become. This is what I deserve. But at the same time, he didn't want that. And he hears in his soul the song he heard when someone took him to church as a kid, Jesus Loves Me. And he couldn't remember anymore except Jesus loves me. And he had this thought, and he now thinks God was even in that trying to reach him. In this battle he's having in his own spirit, even then. And he finally gets to the end of himself. We all have to hit rock bottom before we look up. That's a famous recovery principle. Some different people have different rock bottoms, but many times we have to hit rock bottom before we look up. And Howard said to me, my rock bottom was low. And he cries out, he thinks to himself, even if Jesus does exist, why would he care about me? I've been so horrible. But in desperation, he just cried out, Jesus, save me. And he said, into this darkness, he sees a speck of light coming, getting brighter and brighter and brighter, till again, he described as brighter than the sun, but he could look at it, and it was mesmerizing, and arms reach out, pick him up, take him out of there. And he's then standing before these angels being held by Jesus, and he gives them a life review.
No matter where you're watching Sean Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly,
Repent. Jesus is King.